The topic for today is developing a path to product market fit. Before we dive in, just a little bit about me. Again, my name is Shefali Patel. I have been in the industry for over 28 years. I've worked both in established companies, Motorola Semiconductor, where I was on the technology side of the business, making chips, and on the industrial side at GE Energy, specifically as it relates to this group. And at GE, I spent many years on the commercial side: sales, marketing, innovation, product management, new business incubation, kind of landing new customers. And I've spent time in two startups. One was my own, Element 14, which is an advanced materials solar startup, a polysilicon startup that we founded in 2010 timeframe. And I want to kind of talk about the significance of that, as well as a more recent venture where I led a venture-backed photonics company trying to commercialize optical coatings for solar panels. And I'm going to grow a lot of those insights as we go through, some of these concepts. I've played multiple hats: general manager, strategist, marketer, engineer, and spent some time in customer quality, really, ensuring delivery of a perfect product to very quality and safety conscious customers. Very importantly, what I wanted to talk about, some skills or core competencies as an entrepreneur, especially having a customer discovery mindset. I know you hear that a lot, as you get coached on how to launch your startup or how to have a successful go-to-market strategy. And I can't kind of overemphasize sort of this way of being, especially when you are in company of a customer, whether on a call or at a customer site, just observing how they operate, assuming that way of being is a very critical part of getting to a successful product market fit. And with that comes deep listening skills, how you pay attention to critical cues as you are, observing them or listening to them. And then how you synthesize all of that information into delivering a successful product towards a customer outcome. So I wanted to kind of talk about those two, especially as an entrepreneur. You want to put them in, high momentum mode. I have an engineering and a business background. For today's learning objectives, I want to kind of land on three specific things. We want to talk about this term, product market fit, in the context of commercialization and startup growth. Who defined it or who coined it, and what that means in a product lifecycle context. Talk about some of the critical marketing concepts to achieve that fit. And then as we go through the discussion, I'll kind of point out some common mistakes that you can avoid. Into that outcome, we want to make sure we cover first principle, product life cycles, and the elements that are very important in achieving this milestone are really getting some of the fundamentals right, i.e. problem statement definition, both in established environments and startup environments. I am surprised many times on how difficult this task is. And when you land on the perfect problem statement, it is a clear indicator of a maturity of a startup, or kind of smarts, if you want to call it, or an established venture. The approach to market research is also very critical in how you organize it from a kind of a desktop perspective, sizing the market, segmenting the market, profiling an ideal customer, in using that intelligence to shape your go-to-market strategy. Segmentation is a supremely critical exercise where you start, honing in on a specific group of customers that will be your partners in creating revenue growth. So we'll talk a little bit about that. The idea of a use case is a great tool when you start thinking about how the customer interacts with your product and how to use the intelligence of a customer workflow on how they get work done to articulate and map out that use case and use it to shape your product development journey. Value prop, of course, we'll talk about that using a couple of templates, and then I'll finish off with some book resources that you can refer to. As we dive in, I couldn't begin without showing my excitement about this very moment in time, especially in the US. I think it's a great time to be a solar company. I wanted to offer you this graph on the right that shows electricity generation, like total power generated per year in terawatt hours. And you can see how far we've come along over the last 2+ decades. And solar indeed has taken off. Clearly we know that China has been leading this space, but in kind of the last 5 years, we've also launched into an exponential journey establishing kind of solar capacity in the country, a lot of the government support. And it's, the time is here and it's a great time to be a solar company. That's not to say that the solar sector doesn't have challenges that, your ventures can help solve. And I wanted to point out that as you dial into the solar space, it's critical to understand the challenges that utilities or O&M operators of solar farms, EPC companies are experiencing. Some of the main ones that I have gathered based on talking to utilities or just kind of reading the intelligence out there is that despite all this capacity that's in plan or being installed, there's still just kind of a lot of challenges in terms of getting the farm connected to the grid. So there's a lot of time involved in actually starting to generate revenue, and that translates to how you project your revenue plans or plan your launches. So that's one critical part to be aware of, that despite all the excitement and the support, there is some challenges to how long it takes to get the connection to the grid or the permitting process, or some of the local resistance sometimes in having these farms go up. So I want you to keep that in mind while you launch into this market, to make sure that your estimates for revenue growth when you achieve product market fit are accounting for how long it'll take to overcome these challenges and paying attention to them when you're talking to utilities and being empathetic to their world. A couple of fast facts, just, incredible amount of dollars going into renewable technologies, 1.7 trillion, and 23% electricity out of kind of total generated expected to come from renewable sources. And that's 10 points up from a decade ago. I tried to launch my startup in 2010, and we had to fold just because the market wasn't there. And that was kind of my reason to kind of flip this chart up, that the timing is great for your ventures. Next slide is product market fit definition and scope. Want to point out that this is a sort of a specific moment in time, a transition between you introducing a product into the market and when it actually starts to grow in a market is when you achieve product market fit. The period within the development phase and the introduction phase is typically one that is full of iterations, feedback loops, where you have some idea of the product, the market or the subsegment you are launching your product in, quick learnings, incorporating them in your kind of product development, launching them, and really honing in on the customer type that is underserved in the way they get things done today, and that desperately need your product. And getting to that insight or customer very quickly, so then you can start optimizing the business model, how you deliver the product, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to point out where this milestone actually occurs. The other thing to know in terms of its origin, it is a term that's coined by a famous VC, Mark Andreessen, and has gained a lot of popularity amongst the startup community. It's a framework, a milestone, a gateway to kind of exponential growth. Any questions? Okay. Another really foundational principle that I wanted to point out is this idea of customers trying to get a job done in their daily lives. It was a term that was coined by a very famous innovation guru named Clay Christensen, and it differs from sort of the traditional way of how you go about segmenting a market, which is very much sort of role or persona based. And while those are important, the jobs to be done concept puts a lot of emphasis on a circumstance or a situation that a customer finds him or herself in, understanding that situation, understanding the motivation of a customer to get to a certain outcome, and designing your go-to-market planning, designing your product to help that customer get the job done. The functional aspects are, I feel that most of us in the venture world have an easier time comprehending. It's the utility value of your product, a technology that helps maximize or improve solar efficiency. But understanding the social or emotional dimensions of a job to be done require a founder or a marketer to go a couple levels deep to find what's driving the user to get the job done in a more holistic way, and using that intelligence to kind of shape your go-to-market strategy is what underlies this principle. And as a very kind of tactical example, there's a famous quote: people don't want to buy a quarter-inch drill, i.e. drill being a product. They want to buy a quarter-inch hole, i.e. outcome that the customer wants to get to. And some examples I wanted to point out are, great brands out there that have timeless products, Thermos, the Wall Street Journal, Tylenol. And we can kind of deconstruct these as we go along, but wanted to lay this out as one of the first principles as you conceive your product market fit journey. 3 conditions have to be met for you to achieve a product market fit. First and foremost, your product needs to be differentiated and unique enough to make sure that you are solving the customer problem perfectly and better than other alternatives for the customer to easily adopt it or switch from whatever they're using today, which is competition, or other company products that are also typical competition. The second condition, of course, is the customer is willing to pay a price or premium for getting the desired outcome. And you need a market, which is you need a group of similar, I'd say, desperate customers that are underserved in that same need that help you with repeat business. The next thing I wanted to do is kind of offer you a very, very simple framework to kind of deconstruct a customer job to be done in a problem statement that uses a situation analysis approach and a progress towards an outcome versus identifying goals, i.e. a O&M operator at a utility, or a middle-aged mom, or the Wall Street banker. And those roles are important, or those personas and how they behave are important in shaping your go-to-market journey. But more fundamentally, I think honing in on a common situation that your customer find him or herself in is more important. And typically, there's a timing of a situation or a circumstance you want to hone down. You want to get to the motivation of why that customer wants to get to an outcome. And those would be the first three steps in identifying components of a problem that your customer is trying to solve. And as a couple of examples, I wanted to, say Wall Street Journal is a product that I am trying to hire. My customer outcome statement would be articulated along the lines of, I want a reliable, intelligent source of business newspaper in the background, usually in the morning, that I know will be there every day at the same time in the early morning hour, that helps me stay informed. Outcome number one. Outcome number two, achieve superior performance at work. And I will hire a Wall Street Journal because it does that job perfectly than any other newspaper out there for my needs. If you flip sides and you say, what does a great company problem statement look like? I typically appreciate simple problem statements that have enough specificity and are succinct to communicate, a customer problem that a venture is trying to solve. And I'd seen this problem statement by Macy's recently, and I loved how they phrased it. Macy's launched a brand after 2 years of research to standardize how clothes fit on women. And they wanted to simplify the process of getting dressed. And the way they did their market research, the way they decided on 2 or 3 sizes, narrowed down from 20 to simplify how women shopped and how clothes fit, and using those two to serve an outcome of simplifying the process of getting dressed. Third example, real quick. Say I want to buy a car. I'm a middle-aged parent with a teen daughter that is trying to buy a car. I am motivated to make sure that as a parent, I want to increase the safety of my child when they start driving for the first time. And you can deconstruct this job statement by, I will self-identify. So when you are researching your customers, listen for, what they declare. There is a direction of improvement. They typically increase or decrease something. They want to achieve safety of a user, a child, in a situation when they start driving for the first time. So, train yourselves to start paying attention to these sometimes non-obvious things that hide behind the scenes when you're talking to customers. What I wanted to do now is kind of broaden the list to other critical elements of, developing the right new product and matching it with the right market. We talked about, problem statements, the customer job to be done mindset, targeting the right customer group, and we'll get to segmentation in a couple minutes. Nailing the use case is a real critical one. It's typically, again, involves a lot of observation on how the customer interacts with the product. Typically, you want to schedule a site visit to start shadowing the customer on how they, install an inverter on a solar farm. Like, what does the day of a customer or a technician or a maintenance operator look like when they are going to do just that? Understanding competition and, really probing for why customers are choosing your product versus others. And staging your questions to get to those answers so that not only you can articulate your value prop statements on how you're differentiated, but also start optimizing around your strengths versus, opportunities for development you don't initially want to focus on. And understanding what customers value and focusing on those particular features of your product or service, again, kind of accelerates your journey to product market fit. And then very importantly, you can't achieve a product market fit till you get the business model right. You got the right product, you got the right customer, but in between lies how you're going to monetize, how you're going to get the product delivered, and how are you going to line up the resources to make sure that you operate in a very efficient way to get the product made and delivered and adopted by the customer. Just a quick sort of graphic for, how use case development is organized or coordinated. It is a pretty common practice, especially in software companies that are creating user interfaces. And I just wanted to, pop up an example of a simple shopping online app where a customer will typically, look at the screen to view products, they add product to the cart, check out, but there is a sequence of events, and that is the workflow you want to kind of hone. And the linkages between each stage, if you will, from a customer standpoint, and then from a seller developer standpoint, like what you need to enable behind the scenes to make sure that user journey is perfectly incorporated as you design these interfaces. And you can do this in the hardware setting too. Not just the way the product is designed in, kind of look and feel and, usability, but the entire customer experience on how they become aware of the product to how they start integrating it in their lives. So just a little bit about kind of the importance of use case development. Segmentation, can't overemphasize the usefulness of this marketing skill. It is very simply put the process of narrowing down servable and paying customers. And as a illustration, what I wanted to show is if you have a market defined by this circle that has multiple kind of potential buyers, what you want to do is segment them along some specific differentiating factor, whether it's similar needs or situations that align with your product, and then find the best fit amongst these two. I'll go one step beyond and say that even once you have identified, say, the kind of purple group to serve, you want to, in the very initial stage, get down to the smaller sliver of your most attractive segment and make sure you find the most needy customers that have a good cultural fit, easy to do business with, because you're going to spend time with them, not only, once you land the deal, but developing a pilot project, really owning in your operating model, collecting the payment. And a year will go by, and making sure you do enough upfront discovery to land the right customer is a very important task, to avoid, choosing whoever comes along that's willing to pay. Another analytic concept, market sizing. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of it. The reason this is important is because you want to work on an important kind of problem, but you want to make sure that problem is big enough so that you're launching in the right market that has the potential to make you a good sized business. And there are methods to go from total available market to serviceable available market. I'm missing text here. Serviceable obtainable market. And the most important in your initial stages of a venture development is the most obtainable market. These are customers that are typically local, very willing to engage, early adopters. So I actually inserted this term that's outside of your typical TAM-SAM-SOM framework. These are your very, very important early customers. Going to pivot next to value proposition. This statement, this understanding is, again, kind of plays a role in multiple kind of parts of your business for communicating who you are as a company, like what you want to focus on, how you want to grow, so on and so forth. And typically you want to have a value proposition that is aligned around customer needs, where competitors have a gap. And as I said earlier, around your company's strengths. You don't want to be a sort of one-size-fits-all company. You want to really focus on differentiation and play to your strengths. And that's what gives you credibility. I won't go into these wonderful examples of Costco and Instant Pot just in the interest of time, but they are companies that have mastered the value prop and how they deliver it, how they source products, curate them, satisfy the customer. Same thing with Instapot. And here I actually wanted to make a point. Instapot, it is a pressure cooker. There have been a lot of products available in the market, but it made a debut, I want to say 3-4 years ago, and it became a market winner. And it does the job of cooking food wonderfully, but the emotional and social aspect of the job to be done principle that I talked about is a cook that wants freedom, like they want to be able to turn on the cooker, program it, walk away, and know that it will get done on time, it'll get done well. They don't have to worry about it exploding when they're gone. So it's the freedom is one outcome, as an example, that I wanted to talk about, that you won't come up with instantaneously in your typical customer discovery process. A quick example of a value proposition template is, especially when you come up with a statement that you want to put on your marketing materials or use in your applications, it needs to have the target customer you're trying to serve, make sure you capture their core needs, the name of your offering, the frame of reference, a utility that is trying to do something. Benefits, a point of difference, and support in terms of making sure you are the only company because of your credibility in XYZ. And keep these criteria in mind as you start to write out your value proposition statement. Some critical factors in product market fit is one, think about it as a journey. As I said very early on, right? It is a iterative mindset. You want to do some kind of upfront desktop analysis, but you need to land on a hypothesis and start, talking to customers, visiting them to validate or, start tweaking your hypothesis and then launch an MVP. Try to get it generally right versus perfect in your early stages. Love the problem, not the solution. It's really important. Like, get in the customer's shoes, think about their problem, not that you have a widget and you want to get to revenue. Smart experiments. Time is, it's a very expensive resource, so can make sure you design smart experiments both for your product as well as your market, and keep iterating. Just a couple of visuals I wanted to plant as key principles in this whole kind of product market fit technology diffusion world. Some of you may have seen this Jeff V. Moore chart, and the point I wanted to make is what this shows is when you are a startup, ventures, markets, products have a typical life cycle. And that's what this kind of curve is showing, that initially your product gets adopted by early adopters or innovators. These are risk takers. And you can find your first product market fit early on. So there can be 2 product market fit stages. And then you have your second group that are fast followers, and then your mainstream. So kind of think about it in phases or a couple of stages versus one particular event. And finally, what I wanted to conclude, to get to product market fit, identify a problem worth solving in a sizable market, make sure it's big enough to solve, but initially start with those kind of very, very needy customers that are accessible and have the right DNA fit and are willing to pay. Get to MVP reasonably fast versus kind of perfecting it for years and losing the market timing opportunity. Business models are really, really critical to kind of articulate as well as map out. And business model is kind of typically kind of laid out in terms of the monetization scheme of your business, as well as the operating and the delivery model for your product. Test, measure, and learn with your first right customer, and kind of repeat the process till you get to product market fit. A few resources. I wanted to recommend some books. Competing Against Luck. Luck is a great book by Clay Christensen. He's the sort of the inventor of the jobs to be done theory. And there have been kind of lots of people who have tried to conceptualize this into frameworks, including NSF Corp. So that's the book where you can find a lot of good intel. Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And then Steve Blank is another Stanford professor, kind of entrepreneurial thought leader, who also has a lot of literature around product market fit.